Hello everyone, welcome to Salem, South Dakota, a map created by Federal, and again I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. This was for Farming Simulator 11, and it's a 4X map based on a real life area in, of course, Salem, South Dakota. Now, in the first episode, I gave somewhat of an overview of the map, although admittedly a poor one, because we didn't spend any time in here. It is a large map, being 4 times a normal size, and it's wide open. It is classic Midwest farming, where it's mile by mile and acre upon acre of farmland, and so it's challenging to get around in here quickly, as one might do in a traditional map overview. Now, we saw a little here of the main farmstead, and I pointed out some areas on the PDA map when we could see the whole thing. As we all remember, in Farm Sim 11, we could only see part of the PDA map at a time, and you'll notice, looking at this, we are sitting apparently in an alfalfa field, and the reason is, in Farm Sim 11, they assumed everybody would have just a standard sized map and that nobody would build larger maps, or that kind of seems what it is. So the game was designed to only handle a PDA map of a standard size map. Well, when you quadruple it, you run into trouble in that it isn't going to tell you where you are on the PDA map. So more on that later. We kind of had to, that was one of the fixes that we had to put into the map, among some other things. Right now we have this handy error running in the background over and over and over. But before I show how to fix it, let me show just a little of the map. We've already seen kind of the main farm buildings here. There's a classic American barn there. There's some newer outbuildings, kind of the curved shape. Just a general farmyard here. Almost looks like animals are maybe over there. Fencing here. Grain storage over here, that old auger. But there's a little tucked away in this building here. There's a teleport trigger. So we're going to go on that real quick. There we go. We now, if I pull up the PDA, see, we're way off the map, but in reality, we are at the airport. Now, look at this airplane. American Airlines, and again, I mentioned in the previous video, the models that you see on here are going to be very rudimentary. I don't know if Federal himself created these models or if he had someone else make them. Again, kudos to the guy for doing it. This is way more than I could ever do. But if you're looking for high quality models or things that help you suspend reality, in that you're not just in some kind of computer game, the models aren't going to do it for you. But he does make a passable attempt at an airport. Just a single plane here. The second plane, of course, is up in the air. There it is, kind of right off in the distance here. But following that one teleport lands you at the airport. So we are here. So let me follow the teleport again. And voila, we are in Florida. And you'll see as we turn over here, here's the border that I was talking about in the previous episode. You can see it straight ahead. I don't know that the border is really any different from how it was on the farm. You can see it off in the distance, and this is the challenge to a mapper. Putting an area in here, you'll notice it's obvious where the regular sky is, where it ends. There's that same old plane, although it disappears depending on what angle we're at. And so you can tell you're still on the same map, just kind of in a different area. The PDA map, if it worked, would bear that out. Matter of fact, let me see. Yeah, you can't even hardly, you can just barely see us wiggle over there in terms of where we are. It has us somewhat in the right area on the map, but not quite. This is an attempt at a palm tree, which they're in abundance down there in Florida. So this is kind of the Florida area. And again, I don't know that you do anything here. Oh yeah, we came over here kind of by this. There's a lighthouse. So there's just a beachfront area right behind the sign here. What does it say on the sign? Vacation time, enjoy the beach. So, I mean, there's a beach down here, a couple chairs to sit on, and there's the good old ocean. Interestingly, he put a small island out there. Not sure why, but we could swim out there. This is the regular old water from the game, so we are swimming out here. But you can see the map borders kind of off in the distance. It is really, really hard for a mapper to do map borders. So it kind of can play with your mind and go, what in the world is that over there? But he tried, and it's still maybe for realism and what have you, it isn't quite there. You can also see, because it's a 4X map, you can see the edge of the skybox here, and you see kind of the hard edge. So I imagine if we swam out there far enough, we would go beyond the edge of the skybox. I believe it's still a standard-sized skybox. Typically, when you get a larger map or larger than a 4X map, you also have to expand the size of the skybox. The box would be more than enough for a standard-sized map, which would sit in the middle of it. But when you get out here, you can start to see kind of the edge of it. It's just another 3D object that sits over top of the map and has a picture of the sky painted on it, like we can see. Anyway, behind the sign over here, as you come to Florida, and you can see another one off in the distance. I wonder if it'll take you over there. Let's just jump in the teleport. Yep, it took us over there from way over there. We can see it. So here's kind of another area. I'm not sure what this is. It's some kind of building, maybe a hotel. Let's go through the teleport again. And okay, it takes us to an orange grove. I'm not sure where we are on the map. We're still kind of down on the end of it. So it took us here to some oranges. There's another field. Huh. Well, now that's interesting. Apparently, there is a field here that I suppose if we wanted, I really don't know if the equipment go through the teleport or not. So maybe it's just an area or field that we can't, do anything with. I really don't know. Yeah, we're still kind of jammed. Yep, there's the border. So we are still confined in the Florida box, and we'll just continue on over here. I believe this takes us back to home. Yep, this is home base, and we're back where we need to be to do farming. We can see here, yep, that's kind of the original spot. So just thought I would show a little bit of the map, show the surprise. There are many other areas to see on the map according to the PDA, and lots of farming to do. But I think I want to show next how we can deal, with this particular error. It's a terrible error. It fills up the log, and we'll see that in a moment, just kind of what it's doing and how big it gets. I'm going to get out of the game for now, and we'll be back in a moment. All right, here we go. This is the text file of the log, and most of this is just normal loading material. Loading the mods that I have in here. A few errors here and there, nothing too major. But once the map opens, we get this pesky error here, and it goes on and on and on and on. And you can see over here where the little scroll bar is at the top of the page, it is just filling the log with tons and tons and tons of these lines. Something in the map is moving, and it ain't supposed to be moving. So, and it just continues to fill it up with literally hundreds of lines. You know, you'll see here it's 3.4 megabytes text file. I kind of think that there's an upper bound as to how much you can store in a text file, and then of course it blows apart. But 3.4 megs, and actually, you know, if we return to Farm Sim 11 download here on ModHoster, you know, you can see even in the comments, some of them not very kind. This one here must be a fan. You know, no lag, no bugs, no problem. Well, there was a problem. This map beats all records, 14 megabyte log after just 10 minutes. He says avoid it. It's unfortunate sometimes, you know, that a lot of these errors can't be drummed out before they get uploaded. But the fact of the matter is sometimes you just don't know how to fix them. Let's see, that is a 4-way map PDAC. I think this was in German previously, so Google Translate may not be doing the best job. I think what this person is saying is the PDA map doesn't work. Create video, not available. Oh, this so helpful description. Well, that's just a bunch of good old-fashioned sarcasm. Great description. There's another one here. You know, as we come up and look at, I mean, there's some pictures. Apparently, once upon a time, there was a video. It isn't there anymore. And we have an absolutely blank description. And I really don't know just who uploaded this. You know, if it was a map author himself, a lot of times other people will do it on the map author's behalf, but typically without asking the map author first. So you know what? It's possible that the map author's version, if we could access this, might be a fixed version. But unfortunately, the link has long been broken over the years. So this is the one that we're left with here, if anyone want to have it. And again, I'll put it down in the description, so you can download it and try it yourself if you want. What was I doing in here? Oh yeah, I was just showing the complaints. You know, and this guy here, particular notes that the log file is jammed up. So we want to really try to fix that, and we need to do it inside the map i3D. I've loaded it here in the Giants editor. I'm going to kind of scroll out and get out here. So the thing that I typically would look for when we have an error, you know, that looks like the one that we had with static actor moved, you know, there are tons of objects, but one of the number one things that I look for when I'm trying to fix it is anything on a spline. And like this here, it's a train, and we'll just see it here. It's kind of sitting on the map. This is kind of on the upper end of the map. Oh, you'll notice that the camera is cutting off out here, which is kind of annoying. The map is so large that this makes a difference. So let me fix the camera. Our clip is 1,000. Let me just put another 0 on there, so it is 10,000, and that'll put us out 10,000 meters, so we can see the far edge of the map. We're kind of up here by Lake Vermilion. And oh yeah, we're looking at this this particular train. This is an object. When it's on a spline, it's going to be moving in game. So we know this thing is going to be roaming around the map. Now we notice it's a rigid body, which is okay. A rigid body typically means it has a collision. So I don't know if you can see that little box check. So let's see what kind of rigid body it is. And okay, collision. I gotta say, when I initially did this, this was, you see up here, it's kinematic, which is exactly what it should be. It was static. And when it's static, it is designed to stay put. It isn't designed to move. And I remember seeing this back in the day when I played on this map. This train would move. And so it needs to be kinematic because it's going to be moving based on what a script tells it to do. All right, let's check out the other one, which is I think it's the airplane. Yeah, if we get up here, it's the one flying kind of up in the air. And this one here, it's static. And so remember, we want it to be kinematic. And it's supposed to, that way it can move. But when it's static, it is designed to stay put. So when we were in game and we looked up in the air and we could see the airplane moving, every time the thing moved and twisted and turned, it was filling our log with garbage because it was a static object and it's supposed to stay put. Now, let me just save this here real quick so the next time when we go in game that it's saved. Now, when I initially looked at this again, this map, and downloaded it and thought, boy, I would really like to fix that because I remember all the problems that we had. I fixed both the train and the airplane and figured that would take care of everything. Well, but it didn't. And so there are other things that I wanted to show and just share a little bit. If anybody ever has a problem like this, these are the easy ones. You know, you can open up a scenograph and find the spline. It's got this little squiggle here. Those are pretty easy to find. The ones that are tough to find and are going to be challenging are going to be ones like this that we're going to see here just in a moment. This is up at the dairy barn. Is that sucker red on one end and not on the other? Yeah, it's red and this end looks black. Is it really black? Oh no, maybe it's red. Maybe it's just a lighting. Anyway, you'll notice inside here that there's a little grass plane here. Let me just see if I can, oh, that's a trigger. Click on it. Give me the, there we go. This is where they get really insidious. So you'll see the plane sits here and the feeding trough is all through here. I think there are several triggers down this alleyway here. So if I just highlight on, of course it isn't going to show you. Maybe I can show, oh no, because they're not visible. Yeah, there's one of them. You can click on some of these others, of course, and see visible. So you can't see them, but they're there. They're designed for when you come in here with a tractor and you drop grass, that it will deposit, allow you to dump it in this plane, which isn't really set up, is going to rise and fall depending on how much grass you have in here. So this plane, because it moves up and down, it isn't supposed to be static. Well, you know, when you look on here, it's a silo amount mover. That's a script that based on how much grass you have in the silo, it is going to move it up and down depending on the level between these two Y bounds, Y being up. So it starts at 1.6 meters and it can rise as high as 1.77. Well, the problem was when I came in here, and it isn't this way anymore, is it was a rigid body and it was identified as a static object, and you can't have that in something that is designed to move. So the choice that I had was either to get rid of the script so that it no longer worked, or to keep the script and turn it into a different kind of object. And it isn't an object. You'll know notice it doesn't have a rigid body. You could have it a rigid body and then call it kinematic, or in this case here, it's just the shape. So you could walk through, drive through, whatever. It'd be as if it isn't even there. Well, anytime you have a hard object, it's harder on performance. So if you can avoid it, kind of like here, and treat it just as a shape, something you see but that really isn't there, then all the better. But this was another reason that we were collecting all those errors, because the game engine saw that it was a static object and that there was movement being put to it. And this wasn't the only one, sadly. I had to go through this entire section here to fix this. And some of this too, there's other, and this is where you really gotta look at them carefully, because there's other things that cause movement. This one here would move on its own. Sometimes in these triggers that are in here, you'll have other things that refer to something called a moving index. The moving index, and you would have to read, see, this is a tip trigger script. You'd have to read the tip trigger script to know what it's referring to, but it has something where you can identify the indice of a moving index, meaning dump stuff into the trigger and then move something else. Move this, move the object at this. You'd have to know that this refers to the parent object at the index 0. So for this here, the parent object is feeding trough, index 0 is playing. So not only was this one telling it to move, this over here, this other script is also telling it to move, which honestly is probably kind of confusing. It still isn't fixed properly. I'm just pointing out, even if this had nothing on it and was just sitting here minding its own business with no other script, this trigger down here would be telling it to move, and every doggone one of these is doing that. So you kind of have to look carefully in the map if you're trying to figure this out for even these, because they will also cause the static actor moved, or however it says that. Really kind of painful. And if a person is creating a map and you want these triggers in it, a lot of times what you can do is go to the Giants map and you export these triggers and you keep them together and you take them exactly as they are and you import them into your created map exactly as they were, to help keep them set up properly. Because, we don't always know. I mean, like I say, you'd have to read the script of tip trigger, and it was provided by Giants. You'd have to read it to know that this moving index is referring to the parent, and then this here to know what it's attempting to move. And most people probably don't waste time reading scripts. Some of us are dumb enough that we've attempted to do that. So suffice it to say, there was all sorts of areas where these kinds of things had to be fixed in the map, and to get it to work. And now we just saved it a little bit ago. I think there was just one that I tweaked just to show the errors. Hopefully when we go back in game, it'll be all fixed. Now, the other thing that I fiddled with in here is just kind of a personal preference. And it's distance textures. You know how you can look up here and you see the purple down here, so there's some alfalfa, you see the brown, you see these different colors. Actually, the brown refers to cultivated. Whenever a map has fruits put in it that are already planted, you want a color to show up kind of that are there. I only did this on 2 fields. Let's zoom in here on this one. This is soybeans, and okay, you know what? This isn't the best distance textures, but this isn't one the map had. But the only way these distance textures show up is if the field is actually planted. When you zoom in here, you see these lines, that's the planted texture. Now, if we go to another field, like right beside it, yeah, this would be a good example. See, we have corn in here, but you look down here, it's the cultivated texture. It isn't the planted texture. So when you pop up here and look, if it was planted texture, you would see green over here representing the corn. But instead, you only see, hey, this is a cultivated texture, and it plays with your eyes. So a lot of times I've noticed when mappers create maps, one of the things they forget to do is when they plant a field is they forget to put underneath it the planted texture. Now let me see, like there was one I changed over here. See, this is a cornfield. So when we zoom in here, I put the planted texture down. And so when you look out, you see the green for the corn. Not so with this field over here, which also has corn in it. And it doesn't make any difference, you know, when you harvest it. This field will harvest just fine. But I'll tell you, you're going to have a problem when you go to cultivate the field because it's already cultivated. So you're going to have to do it manually. You won't be able to hire it done. So it's better if mappers can remember to put the planted texture down. So it has something to do with how distance textures are blended. And this one here now, there isn't any, this is right over the top of, it isn't a field, it's just the grass, base grass, if you will, underneath. And this is the barley texture that he's saying that he put in here and treated as a type of grass. It didn't have any, or it didn't have a distance texture that matched. Barley, I mean, everybody knows what barley is. It kind of looks similar to this over here, right? So the texture out here was kind of a beige brownish type color. Oops, sorry. And that just didn't match the grass. So I created a new texture to kind of help blend in over here, just so it helped, you know, better represent. It's still, I mean, you still see the red circle here. But I at least wanted something to better represent something closer to what the foreground is. And all of that kind of thing, of course, takes time, and time being in short quantity, maybe the map author just didn't want to take the time to do it, didn't care, whatever it is. You know, I also expanded the viewing distance, and I'll show here in a moment kind of some of the ways how to do that. But yeah, and you know, to create one of these textures, all I did is I did a good old-fashioned screen snip, freeze the screen here, take a square, and then I opened it in Paint.net, made it a perfect square, and I replaced, just wrote over the name of the barley texture, distance texture, and replaced it with this one. And that's really all I did, and then the game engine takes care of the rest in turning it into this. You could give it its own texture name, but then you gotta mess with the i3D file to fix it. And speaking of i3D file, let me show you kind of how to get into that. I dive, you gotta unzip the map. I was right click on it. You can edit with Notepad. We'll just pull it up here. Takes a little bit to load because it's going to be thousands and thousands of lines of basically XML code that describe the features of this particular map. So you have files that it loads to do it, maybe textures, materials, you know, that are going to be put on particular objects or for crops. Shapes, that's describing the shapes of a particular object. There's thousands of lines dedicated to that. Maybe even hundreds of thousands. Yeah, so you get down here to line 956,000. There's dynamics and then the scene. And then down the rest of this are all items you can find in the scenograph. But there's a whole section here dedicated. It's called the foliage multi-layer. If you want to come in here, foliage sub-layers for each particular crop that describes basic features of it, their channels and whatnot. Well, if you look for something in here called view distance, this is how big the circle's going to be that you can view it, 100 meters. A lot of these maps is out to 70. I like to push it as far out as I can and get away with it. I got to remember Farm Sim 11 had some challenges when it came to performance, so I think all I can get away with is about 100 meters. But that's kind of what keeps this circle out here 100 meters. If I had my way, I'd push it out 1,000 meters, but I don't think my computer could handle it. That way you can see the more of the foliage and less of the distance texture, if you will. So here's the foreground, this is distance over here, whereas the foreground shows the specific details of the particular texture. But this is where you fix it. Now, this isn't the only area where you have to fix it. You got to look in a number of areas. So the next thing you look at is you look up the material ID. So let's just take this one here for wheat, material ID. We'll just do a copy and we'll go Control F find, and we got it in here. Let's go to the material. So it's up here. You're going to see this custom parameter called alpha blend start end. Well, that describes how the blending happens at the edge of the circle. And if we zoomed out, you could see it more. But the alpha blend start end, here, these two values between 90 meters and 100, you gotta change these as well as view distance. But wait, there's more, as they say. So when you go into the map, another thing you gotta check is the shaders. And let me just look up, we'll see like grass foliage shader. It's gonna, well, no, I guess that one doesn't have it. Let me see, wheat foliage shader probably does. Yep, it does. In the shaders themselves, alpha blend start end, you see over here, they also have default values, and I just come in here to the shader and I change them here to make sure that it pushes that stupid circle out as far as it can go. So I changed some of those in there. So those are some fixes I did. I updated the textures for this grass. I did some for the alfalfa, and please don't blame Federal for this. This was my attempt. You know, you get down here, okay, now you can kind of see beyond there is the purple. Obviously needs some more work done. Looks terrible the way I've done it, but at least now you can see there's some alfalfa there. Previously, I think it was just green, and so you didn't know what was there until you got really, really close, you know, to see kind of, I think this is alfalfa. Yeah, it's kind of an attempted alfalfa. So that's a change I made. I did some with the barley grass, normal. Oh yes, over on the dairy, let's see, that's way over here. You just gotta find all these areas. See these patches here? This is a different kind of grass. It's called normal grass, I learned. But it was so close up here. You know, it was chopping it off at 25 meters, so I figured out how to put it out further. It didn't have a distance texture, so I gave it one and put it in there. And it's just, you gotta tinker with the i3D file. So maybe with that, I will close the episode here. There's maybe one other thing I'd like to show people on the PDA app, and then maybe I could have an episode farming it a little bit. But I think we're out of time for now, so I will leave the episode there. Hopefully this is helpful. I have no idea if there's anybody out there that still, you know, attempts to work in maps from the Farm Sim 11 era. Some of the principles that I'm describing here apply clear up to Farm Sim 17 at least, possibly even maybe even 19 and 22. I don't know how they there's changes to how it worked with the distance textures. They still have them clear up to the modern versions, I believe, but they're obviously implemented differently. But anyway, thank you so much for watching and giving it a listen. I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.